At 0712 local time, a mission controller in a bunker outside Poltava watches 18 green dots cross a border marker. Steady course, steady speed. 800 kilometers of Russia sit between those dots and Cherepovets-Azot, roughly the distance from New York to Detroit, a top feeder of Russian artillery shell production. Unknown to him, a Tor M2 battery 30 kilometers ahead has stopped searching, locked and fired, and the interceptors are 35 seconds out. The missiles scream off the rails at 3 times the speed of sound. Both connect. Fiberglass confetti rains across the forest outside Zhukovka. 2 drones scratched, 16 pushing northeast. If you look here at what just engaged the formation, the 9M338 is a bouncer at the door of Russia's Air Defense Club. Mach 3 out of the tube, 15-kilometer reach, built to kill cruise missiles in the last 30 seconds of their run. Each one costs about the price of a new luxury SUV. The Tor just spent 2 of them on drones that cost $55,000 apiece. Plywood and composite strike airframes from the Firepoint, 1 electric motor, GPS and inertial nav, a warhead in the nose. A paper airplane with a travel plan, built to be lost. The Russian crews know the trade is bad. They also know the next crew down the line may not get to shoot at all. The controller in Poltava watches the 2 dots wink out. He was told at the briefing to expect to lose 4 in the first hour. 2 down at minute 12 is ahead of schedule. The 2 that just went down were call signs ANVIL 04 and ANVIL 09. Of the 18 airframes that crossed the border, 12 are flying under the call sign ANVIL. The Firepoint drones the Tor just shot at. The other 6 are call sign Hammer, Liutyi long-range strike drones, 75 kilograms of high explosive in the nose, 200 grand per unit. The controller has 10 Anvils and 6 Hammers left. At Piransk Sector Command, the duty officer takes the call and already knows the pattern. Swarm, low, heading deeper than his batteries can reach. The onboard targeting system on each drone only knows the next waypoint, never the last, so nothing recovered from a downed airframe will tell him where the information is ultimately going. He picks up a different phone and dials Kotelovo Air Base, 500 kilometers north. The Alert 5 Regiment flies MiG-31 VMs. Scrambling a MiG-31 to chase a plywood drone is the kind of math that keeps Russian logistics officers awake at night. The jet burns $20,000 of fuel per hour to catch something that costs less than a mid-range sedan. They scramble anyway, because if they don't, and the flock reaches whatever it's aimed at, the officer who didn't scramble is the one sitting across the table in Moscow next week. Call sign Korshun 71 is wheels up in under 4 minutes. 46 tons of fighter claws through 7,500 meters and accelerates to Mach 1.4 inside 2 minutes, roughly New York to Philadelphia in 4 minutes, and points its nose at 16 drones whose top speed is slower than highway traffic. The Zaslon AM radar paints the sector at full power. Nothing else strapped to a fighter outputs that kind of raw wattage. 50 kilometers ahead of the MiG, 10 Anvils and 6 Hammers are now sitting inside the brightest radar beam in the Russian Air Force. With no countermeasures, no maneuverability, no chance of outrunning anything that gets fired at them. They are flying straight and level at 170 kilometers per hour because that's the only thing they know how to do. If the Russian R-77 works, the formation dies in the next 90 seconds. The pilot has run this intercept 100 times in the simulator, against Tomahawks, against JASSMs, against F-16s at Mach 0.9. Never against anything this slow. He throttles back, the first counterintuitive move of his career, descends to 3,000 meters to flatten his look-down angle, sets up head-on, locks the lead drone, and fires. At the 18-second mark, the R-77's onboard radar takes one good look at its target and rejects it. The Doppler filter writes the drone off as ground clutter and shuts itself off. The missile buries itself in a forest outside Tver. $500,000 of Russian missile now kindling. What it was, the R-77M, NATO call sign AA-12 Adder, Russia's primary beyond visual range air-to-air missile, 90 kilograms, active radar seeker that hunts by broadcasting a signal and listening for the return, shouting into a dark room and waiting for an echo. Effective range, 110 kilometers, built to destroy F-16s and B-52s from the other side of the horizon, the most technically capable weapon on the Korshun 71's bay. It had one way to fail. It found it. Sending a Mach 3 interceptor after a plywood drone is sending a NASCAR driver to chase down a kid on a tricycle. and somehow losing. If you look here at why a Mach 3 interceptor carrying a $500,000 missile just failed to bring down a plywood drone, the answer is Doppler. Every radar-guided missile uses a pulse Doppler seeker that tracks a target by how the radar echo shifts as the target moves. A fighter at Mach 1 gives a huge Doppler return. A drone at 170 kilometers per hour gives almost none. The filter deliberately rejects anything moving slower than about 100 knots, because at those speeds, everything looks like ground clutter. It's the difference between tracking a race car on a highway and tracking a bicycle on the same highway. The bicycle is the background, and the missile filters it out the same way your brain does. The pilot does the math. He has 4 missiles left and 16 targets. Even if the next R-77 somehow worked, and he now has no reason to believe it will, he still doesn't have enough missiles for the flock. He takes one more shot from a rear quarter aspect, gets the same mid-flight rejection, and radios sector command. Missiles expended, no effect, requesting a tanker. 16 drones flew through the engagement envelope of Russia's premium interceptor and came out on the other side because they were too slow to be seen. In Poltava, the controller exhales for the first time in 9 minutes. The MiG's track peels west off his scope. That was the interceptor that could have caught them. 16 drones heading northeast. Russia's premium fighter just spent $1 million in missiles and connected on none of them. Next in the flock's way is a defensive layer that cost Russia several $billion. And the man in the trailer has a decision to make. 3 hours in, an S-400 Triumph battery on Moscow's outer ring paints all 16 remaining drones on its 91 N6E Big Bird radar at 152 kilometers. The battery commander watches them march across his scope. Every protocol he has ever been trained on says engage a hostile formation inside 400 kilometers. He does not lift the handset. What he doesn't know is that holding his fire just handed Ukraine one gift the rest of the defensive ring couldn't give them: a free 100-kilometer corridor into the heart of European Russia. If you look here at what just refused to fire, the S-400 is the crown jewel of the Russian air defense inventory. 400-kilometer range, Mach 14 interceptors, built to shoot down F-35s and ballistic warheads at the edge of space. Its 40 N6 missiles cost roughly $4 million each. That's a Manhattan house with a luxury car parked in the driveway. But the commander's real problem isn't cost, it's his magazine. Each launch vehicle carries 4 missiles. If he burns them on the flock and the storm shadow comes up behind it, something that actually needs a $4 million interceptor, he won't have anything left to shoot. He watches the scope for 6 minutes. The contacts fade off the east side. He writes the timestamp in his log and hopes someone else's battery has the ammunition for what's coming. The controller in Poltava watches 16 dots cross the inner threat ring untouched. On paper, this is a miracle. In practice, it's a trap. Every GPS receiver in the formation goes dark at the same instant. Not one drone, all 16. The Pol 21 network just flooded the sky with noise on every frequency the satellites use to talk to the ground. If you look here at what the Pol 21 just did, it flooded the sky with noise on the exact frequencies GPS satellites use to talk to receivers on the ground. Cell tower mounted, networked, hundreds of units coordinating at once. A single Pol 21 covers an area the size of a small city. Dozens of them overlap to cover the entire airspace between the border and Moscow. The satellites are still up there, still broadcasting, but the noise on the ground is so loud the receivers can't hear them. Like jamming a phone call by holding a blowtorch against the microphone. Frequency hopping won't save you because every band is flooded at once. This is the layer Russia built after 18 months of watching Ukrainian drones fly on GPS correction. It was supposed to be the wall that stopped everything. In Poltava, the controller watches his entire formation go blind in real time. The course bars on 10 drones start to wobble. Their inertial compasses are guessing now, dead reckoning, flying on memory alone. Like driving toward a city you've never seen with nothing but a compass and the last direction you were pointed before someone cut the signal. 2 of those 10 begin to drift. One of the drifters curves slowly into a forest outside Rezev and detonates against a pine tree. $55,000 of drone, killed by a tree that was minding its own business. A second drifts into a field and goes silent. The controller has prepared for this moment for 2 years, and he still has to remind himself to breathe. He's looking for 6 specific dots in the formation, the 6 that are supposed to not wobble, the 6 the entire mission is built around. If they wobble, the strike is over. If they hold course, the strike is alive. 6 dots hold course. The other 8 blind drones are dead reckoning their way through the gap, holding within a kilometer or 2 of their planned course on inertia and the last known heading. They'll probably make it deeper. Nobody in Poltava can guarantee for how long, but the 6 that matter are not guessing. They're reading the ground. If you look here at the 6 dots that don't wobble, there's no obvious camera on the nose, but the lens is embedded behind a small dark panel. That is a Skynode S, built by Auterion, a Swiss-American autonomy firm whose camera navigation brain has quietly been landing on Russian infrastructure for 2 years. The 6 drones carrying it are Ukrainian-built Liutyis, single-pusher prop, 75-kilogram warhead, 1,000-kilometer reach, $200,000 a copy. Before takeoff, Ukrainian engineers loaded each Skynode with a visual map of the entire route, not a GPS track, pictures. The bend in the Volga outside Tver, the rail junction at Bologoya, the forest edges north of Vizhny Volochyok. Every 20 seconds, the nose camera compares what it sees against what the map says it should see and corrects. It's the difference between asking for directions and reading the street signs yourself. If somebody jams your phone, you're lost. If you can read signs, you don't care whether the phone works at all. The Pol 21 network flooding the sky right now is the electronic equivalent of cutting the phone line in a city where every Liutyi already has a paper map in the glove box. A piece of hardware that fits in a shoebox just made a jamming network that cost Russia hundreds of millions of dollars to operate completely irrelevant for the final 600 kilometers of the flight. In Poltava, 14 dots hold course, 8 ANVILs are blind and lucky, 6 hammers are seeing everything. 2 drone types, 1 package, 15 kilometers to go. A Pantsir SM battery in the Gap Corridor Tower paints the formation at 24 kilometers on its IRS-23 radar. The battery commander has been staring at this sector for an hour. He's seen the Baransk report. He's watched 16 contacts not disappear off anyone else's scope, and he knows exactly what that means. The flock is on a seeing system his jammers can't touch. It belongs to him now. He has a full magazine and 16 contacts on his scope. In theory, enough for 3 shots per drone with a reserve. In practice, his mini-missiles have a 7-kilometer effective envelope, and 170 km/h targets cross his engagement window in under 3 minutes. He gets 1 good salvo and 1 ragged follow-up. Miss on the first, and the drone is outside his envelope before he can reload. He fires at 18 kilometers. A missile screams off the left rail, smaller than anything Pantsir used to shoot. Half the length, a quarter of the weight. Flight time to the lead drone under 9 seconds. Direct hit. The ANVIL disintegrates in mid-flight. Plywood and composite snowing across a wheat field. If you look here at what the Pantsir SM just fired, until a year ago, every Pantsir battery held 12 full-size 57 E6 interceptors. Russia watched 18 months of Ukrainian drone strikes burn through those magazines one for one against $55,000 drones and decided it needed a cheaper missile. The answer was the mini-missile, 4 tubes in the slot for each old one. One Pantsir SM now carries up to 48 mini-missiles instead of 12 full-size. Shorter range, about 7 kilometers versus 20. Less punch, but 4 times the magazine depth. Think of it as switching from a 12-gauge shotgun to a pellet gun. A lot less punch per shot, but you can fire 4 times as many before reloading, which matters when the thing you're shooting at shows up in flocks of 18. Each mini-missile runs $30,000 to $50,000. Against a $55,000 decoy drone, that's finally a trade Russia can afford, if he shoots the right drones. 2 more missiles leave the same battery in the next 12 seconds. 2 more drones down. The commander targets the front contacts. Standard doctrine. Closest first. A 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th come off the rail in 40 seconds. 3 miss. The 4th detonates close enough to a trailing contact that fragmentation clips the wing. Slow flat spin, impact in the forest. The commander looks at his scope and realizes 2 things at once. He spent 7 mini-missiles to kill 4 drones, and the 4 he killed are all from the front 12. The back 6, the ones with the different telemetry signature, are still coming. If you look here at what the Pantsir commander just figured out 12 seconds too late, Ukraine didn't just bring 2 drone types. Ukraine built the formation around the doctrine he was trained on. Front contacts first, closest threats prioritized. That's what every Pantsir commander is taught from day one. It's also exactly what Ukraine was counting on. The ANVILs fly the front wave because Ukraine knew the Pantsir would shoot the front wave. The hammers walk in behind them because Ukraine knew that by the time the radar sorted out which contact carried the 75-kilogram warhead, those contacts would already be inside the back edge of the engagement window, the edge those mini-missiles couldn't reach. 6 hammers entered the Pantsir's airspace. 5 came out on the other side. Riding through a corridor the ANVILs paid for 1 mini-missile at a time. Every ANVIL that detonated was a Pantsir mini-missile that will not be available for the hammers behind it. $55,000 of plywood, trading itself for $50,000 of Russian interceptor and 1 slot in the corridor. The ANVILs are flying straight and holding formation because that's the job. The math only works if the hammers make it through. The ANVILs were never supposed to. He commits 2 more shots anyway. Nothing. 20 kilometers from target. The Pantsir commander has spent 14 missiles for 4 kills. 34 rounds left. 5 hammers are still inbound with 75 kilograms each. The next battery corridor fired its shot 11 minutes ago. 3 simultaneous problems. 1 trajectory that isn't changing. 23 kilometers from Cherepovets, a last mobile group tries. A small airframe pops off a catapult rail in a wheat field. No missile smoke, just a sharp electric whine climbing hard on an electric motor. It closes on a trailing ANVIL at 200 kilometers per hour and rams it. The ANVIL cartwheels. The interceptor disintegrates on impact. That was a small catapult-launched interceptor drone. No warhead, just a dense nose and enough speed to smash into a slower target. AI-assisted visual tracking, a fraction of the cost of a Pantsir mini-missile. A lawn dart with a guidance system and a grudge. The Ukrainians are not the only side with cheap drones anymore. The Russians are learning too. A second interceptor launches 2 seconds behind the first and glides off course into a forest. A third never gets off the rail. Haze, lost visual. In Poltava, the controller counts his screen. 9 dots. 5 hammers, 4 ANVILs. 15 kilometers to target. Everything from here depends on what the hammers do in the next 60 seconds. 8 kilometers out, the lead hammer's course bar on the controller screen shifts by half a degree. Then another half. Then it locks onto a new heading. The other 4 hammers follow within seconds, each making its own correction toward a different angle of approach. The formation is no longer flying as one group. It's flying as 5 individual shooters, each committed to a specific piece of the plant. The Skynode S on each hammer has stopped navigating and started hunting. Route map mode off, target map mode on. Preloaded satellite imagery of Cherepovets-Azot is now the reference file, and each drone is reading the specific rectangular footprint of Ammonia 1's reactor column, the specific pipe cluster that identifies Ammonia 2. 5 shooters, 5 targets. 1 ANVIL breaks from the formation on its older guidance system, drifts off its assigned target by maybe 100 meters, and impacts directly on a metal lattice welded over the top of a large spherical tank on the north side of the complex. Short, bright flash, cloud of debris, no secondary explosion. The tank underneath is scorched, but intact. The Russians in the control room watching that sphere survive a direct hit probably think the cage just did its job. It did, just not the job they thought. 3 years ago, Fosagro welded those lattice frames over every liquid ammonia storage sphere at the Cherepovets-Azot after a series of earlier strikes. Ukrainian targeting teams pulled the satellite imagery during mission planning. Every sphere wearing a cage was a hardened, watched target. Every reactor column, every compressor hall, every substation sitting uncaged in the same frame was the opposite. Unprotected, unmonitored, and now exactly where 5 hammers were already pointed. Russia's anti-drone investment didn't protect the plant. It handed Ukraine the annotated target list. Hammer 1 picks the Ammonia 1 reactor column out of the satellite imagery loaded into its memory 2 days ago in a hangar outside Poltava. The Skynode confirms the match, pipe geometry, building footprint, angle of approach, and commits. No further course corrections needed. The drone has been flying 800 kilometers to look at this exact rectangle. It dives. 75 kilograms of high explosive meets a column running at 200 bar of initial pressure. The column doesn't simply explode. It ruptures, vents, and catches. In that order, inside a tenth of a second. Every cubic meter of vented gas within 40 meters ignites at once. A fireball climbs 300 meters over gate number 6 and leaves a column of black smoke visible from orbit. That fireball was not the 75-kilogram warhead by itself. That was the plant finishing what the warhead started. 200 bars of internal pressure, 2,900 psi, ammonia, hydrogen, and superheated synthesis gas at full operating load, hitting a reactor column like it's popping a pressure cooker full of gasoline on your stovetop. The warhead does 10% of the work, and the plant does the other 90%. An hour ago, this column was producing 1,700 tons of ammonia per day. Right now, it's producing ash and shrapnel. The next 4 hammers ran the same playbook on different targets, each one reading its loaded imagery against the building it had been built to find. Hammer 2 matched the compressor hull of Ammonia 2 against its map, confirmed and dove into the heart of the second production line. Hammer 3 picked the ammonium nitrate building, the structure where the explosive filler for Russian artillery shells is mixed, out of the imagery and committed nose down. Hammer 4 found the nitric acid plant on the second pass of its camera and went in. Hammer 5 had the longest patience of the 5. It bypassed the obvious targets and ran for the electrical substation feeding the offline Ammonia 3 unit, so that even after Russia rebuilds, the power won't be ready to receive. In the Cherepovets industrial zone, 2 residents pull their phones the moment the networks come back up and post video of the smoke column. The next day, both will be summoned to a police station and made to apologize on camera on a state-run Telegram channel for footage of a strike their government will claim never happened. If you enjoyed this video, then watch this even bigger strike Ukraine did on Russia. Bye for now.